I'm going to demonstrate how to import the files from Cobra into RIP. The first thing I'm going to do is start off by talking about the RIP, the import files, the Cobra files to be imported into RIP. Here's a list of the files that I've set up for an example. I've downloaded all of these recently from the Cobra system. They are from the month of November 2018, and you can see each of these files is named very similarly. There's three types of files that come off the Cobra system. The transaction file, which starts with a prefix of ACT. There's the metadata file, which is a file which provides the summary of each one of the files being loaded. So it's a self-test as part of the load process into Cobra. And then there's a support file, which for every single transaction, you will have an Excel file as part of this zip that shows the detail of that transaction. So if I look at 132D, billing entity, I'm going to have a single transaction, and that is for $229,000. Notice in this file, which is the transaction file, in this case, there is no header line, no header row, because that is required for load. You can't have that header row in there. Now, the support file, the related support file is here, and this will have the same transaction, the detail of that transaction, whether it be a one-line detail or a 200-line detail. We will have the support for the single RIP that has happened. So every RIP has its own Excel file. This is going to be loaded in and is going to be available as part of the testing for the recipient in the RIP system directly. So this is how we're going to complete the documentation phase and have all of the transactions supported with their detail. These test files are loaded, so from here on down, those are going to be copied into the directory that RIP accesses as part of production to allow files to be loaded. I will just here explain the convention of the file name. So I've talked about the first three characters, but then we also have the year and the month defining the period, the accounting period. Then we have the billing entity. If there are multiple billing entities, they will be separated by hyphens and listed out. And then we have the time the file was produced, so year, month, day, and time. That is what that entire file name is. That's how you describe the components of the file name. Now, if we go from here into the RIP system and we go into import feeds, we will note here that at the top we have the feeds. Now, the only thing that's changed with this top section is the identification of two buttons, revenue share and Cobra. For purposes of setting up a feed for Cobra, and we have one set up here, you're going to click on the Cobra button, and that's going to set up the Cobra feed. And when I select that one, important to note that when I'm creating a feed, I get to reuse these feeds. So if I can use the same feed for Cobra loads forever if I so choose. So I can use it if I load 7 different feeds in a day for one period, or as I go from period to period to period. I don't have to create a different feed for my Cobra loads. I just have to use the one feed because it describes what that feed is all about, and it tells the system how it's supposed to behave when that file is loaded in. Now when I go down to the feed section, I'm going to select my Cobra demo, which is the one I've just set up. And now it's going to ask me for a file. So this is where I click in and I can select a file. So I'm going to pick 1340 as an example. And I'm going to want to pick a support file. So I also identify the support file. So I'll pick 1340 there. The meta file is already defined. When I define the ACT, it defines both the ACT and the MET file. From here, and the only difference in this section is this extra line where I'm identifying the support. Otherwise, it is the same for both. So then I'm going to go into here. I'm going to click on staging. That is going to bring it in, and it's going to test it for errors. And then once I'm confident, I can do an import, and that tells me I've successfully loaded the file. And if I go down here, I can see what that RIP number is that I just loaded, which is 52553800. And if I want to go look at that transaction, I can do a search. That's going to show me the transaction that I loaded. I can edit that transaction. I'm going to see all the information, including my detail. So here I'm going to see a negative 11,031. And if I look at the detail for that, it's going to pull up an Excel file, which is going to be the exact format we saw before. There's my 11,031, and here's my supporting detail. So this has 3 lines of support. So that shows the detail that the recipient will see as they go through the authorization process. And that is all there is to loading COBRA transactions into RIP on a manual basis. We'll have another video that will describe how the automated process works.